My company's executive used my name to cover up a plane crash, then let the whole country think I chose money over a plane full of terrified families. I'd been working in airline operations for 12 years, and the one thing I'd never compromised on was safety. I pushed back on every budget proposal that cut corners, flagged maintenance delays before they became crises, and sat in meetings arguing for better staffing ratios while executives stared at spreadsheets. My record was spotless. That's what made it so easy for them to use my name. The memo appeared on a Tuesday morning. I was in the break room refilling my coffee when my phone started buzzing. 3 messages came through before I could even look at the screen. The first was from a coworker I barely spoke to anymore, just a screenshot with no text. The second was from my union rep asking if I'd seen the news. The third was a news alert with my face next to a headline about criminal negligence. I opened the screenshot. It was an internal memo dated 6 months earlier, stamped with the operations department header and my signature at the bottom. The subject line read, "Revised Staffing Protocol, Cost Efficiency Measures." The body text laid out aggressive cuts to ground crew, maintenance personnel, and quality assurance inspectors. At the bottom, a note in bold, "Approved for immediate implementation per operational review." I stared at my signature. The loops and angles looked right, but I'd never written those words. I'd never approved those cuts. I'd argued against them in 3 separate meetings and sent written objections to my director. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a video link. I clicked it and watched shaky footage of passengers screaming as an aircraft made an emergency landing 2 days earlier. A hydraulic failure had forced the pilots to use alternate systems, while terrified families clutched their children and flight attendants braced for impact. The plane had landed safely, but barely. The footage was everywhere now, paired with commentary about cost-cutting executives who valued profit over lives. The next clip showed a news anchor holding up the memo. My name was highlighted in yellow. Operations manager Fiona Brennan signed off on these cuts just months before the incident, the anchor said. Sources inside the airline confirmed that maintenance and inspection teams were stretched dangerously thin. I set my coffee down before I dropped it. My director called 30 seconds later. "Fiona, do not talk to anyone," he said before I could say hello. "No media, no statements, no social posts. Legal is handling this. Stay quiet and let them work." "I didn't sign that memo," I said. "I understand you're upset, but right now we need to control the narrative. The company is releasing a statement this afternoon. Until then, you say nothing. Are we clear?" "That's not my signature. I never approved those cuts. I sent you 3 emails opposing them. Fiona, I need you to stay off the radar. This is bigger than one memo. The FAA is involved, Congress is asking questions, and we have families demanding answers. If you go public now, you make it worse for everyone." "I make it worse? My face is on the news. People think I tried to injure passengers." "Then let legal clear it up. Do not engage." He hung up. I stood in the break room staring at my phone while it exploded with notifications. Messages from reporters asking for comment. Emails from coworkers with subject lines like, "Is this real?" and "We need to talk." A text from my neighbor asking if I was okay because her sister just sent her a news link. 3 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I pulled the memo back up on my screen and zoomed in on the signature. It looked like mine. The spacing, the slant, even the way the tail of the N curved back. But I'd never written it. I'd never seen this document before today. I opened my sent folder and searched for the emails I'd written opposing the cuts. They were gone. Every one of them. Deleted or moved, I couldn't tell. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from a reporter asking if I had any comment on calls for my immediate termination. I sat down and stared at the memo. Someone had forged my name, approved cuts I'd fought against, and now the whole country thought I was the one who'd nearly destroyed a plane full of people. I went back to my desk and tried to work. My hands shook every time I touched the keyboard. People walked past without looking at me. The office felt different, like the air had changed pressure. Around noon, I saw 2 coworkers from my team standing by the printer. One of them glanced at me, said something to the other, and they both walked away. I'd worked with them for 5 years. We'd covered each other's shifts, shared lunch, complained about the same broken policies. I checked my work chat. 17 unread messages in the main operations channel, none of them directed at me. I scrolled back through the morning's conversation and saw my name mentioned twice, both times followed by silence. My supervisor knocked on my cubicle wall an hour later. "Fiona, can we talk in the conference room?" I followed her down the hallway. She shut the door and sat across from me with her hands folded on the table. "I need to understand what happened," she said. "I didn't sign that memo. I never even saw it until this morning. The signature matches yours. It's forged. I sent you emails 6 months ago arguing against those exact cuts. I CC'd the director. I laid out every safety concern in writing." She looked at me like I'd just tried to sell her a story about aliens. "I don't have those emails. Check your archive, check the server logs, they were sent." I looked. "There's nothing in my folder from you about staffing cuts." Then someone deleted them. She leaned back and crossed her arms. "Fiona, I've known you a long time. You're good at your job. But right now the company is under federal investigation, and your name is all over this. If you have documentation that clears you, you need to produce it immediately." "I'm trying. My sent folder is empty. But you were in those meetings. You heard me push back on the cuts. I remember you raising concerns. I don't remember you sending formal objections." "I did. I copied everyone." She looked at me for a long moment. "The best thing you can do right now is cooperate with legal and let them handle this. Don't make it harder by going around making accusations. I'm not making accusations, I'm telling you what happened. Then let the process work. In the meantime, the director wants you working from home until this settles. Pack up your desk and HR will be in touch. I stared at her. You're sending me home? It's temporary, just until the investigation moves forward. You're making it look like I did something wrong. We're protecting the team. Reporters are calling the main line. We can't have them showing up here. She stood up and opened the door. The conversation was over. I went back to my desk and started packing my things. A coworker I'd mentored for 2 years walked past and pretended to be looking at her phone. Another one glanced at me, hesitated, and kept walking toward the elevators. I shoved files into my bag and unplugged my laptop. My phone buzzed with a text from a friend outside the company asking if I was okay. 3 more people had sent her the news story. She wanted to know if it was true. I didn't answer. I walked out through the lobby with my bag over my shoulder and my laptop case in one hand. The receptionist looked away when I passed her desk. The parking lot felt like a spotlight. I got in my car and sat there staring at the steering wheel. My phone buzzed again. Another reporter, another request for comment, a notification that someone had tagged me in a post on a flight safety forum. I drove home and pulled into my driveway. My neighbor was getting her mail. She saw me, froze for a second, and walked back inside without waving. I sat in the car for 10 minutes before I went inside. My son got home from school an hour later. He dropped his backpack by the door and looked at me. Mom, why is your picture on the news? It's a mistake. Someone at work did something and they're saying I did it. Logan's mom showed him an article. He asked me if you made a plane crash. I felt something crack in my chest. I didn't. I would never do that. I spend every day making sure planes are safe. Then why does everyone think you did? Because someone lied and used my name. I'm fixing it. He stared at me. Logan's mom said you should be in jail. I couldn't answer that. He went to his room and shut the door. I sat on the couch and opened my laptop. The news story had been shared 4,000 times. The comments were worse than the article. People calling for my arrest. People saying I should never work again. Someone posted a photo of their daughter and wrote, "This could have been her on that plane." My phone buzzed with an email. The subject line was, "Mandatory HR meeting scheduled for Friday, 9 a.m. I opened it. The body was 3 sentences. "Fiona, we need to discuss process failures and conduct violations related to the January staffing memo. Please confirm your attendance. Bring any documentation you believe is relevant." I read it twice. Process failures, conduct violations. They weren't investigating what happened. They were building a case. I set my phone down and stared at the wall. My career was ending. My son's classmates thought I was a criminal. My neighbors wouldn't look at me. And the company I'd worked for 12 years was preparing to make it official. The HR meeting happened in a windowless conference room on the 3rd floor. 2 people I'd never met sat across from me with manila folders and a laptop. My union rep sat beside me taking notes. The HR director opened her folder and slid a document across the table. "Fiona, we're here to address procedural violations related to the January staffing memo and your failure to escalate safety concerns through proper channels." I stared at the paper. I didn't sign that memo. I've been saying that since Tuesday. The signature analysis came back inconclusive. What we can confirm is that you attended 3 budget meetings where staffing reductions were discussed, and you did not file a formal safety objection through the required reporting system. I sent emails. I copied my director and my supervisor. I laid out every concern in writing. We have no record of those emails in our system. If you failed to use the proper channels, that's a violation of protocol. Someone deleted them. The same person who forged my signature. She looked at me like I'd just claimed the building was haunted. "Fiona, making unfounded accusations against colleagues is serious. Right now, we're documenting a pattern of procedural failures. You attended meetings, you had concerns, and you failed to escalate them properly. That's on record." My union rep cleared his throat. "Can we see the documentation of these meetings?" The other HR officer opened the laptop and turned it toward us. Meeting notes from January, March, and April. My name listed as an attendee. Budget proposals attached. No record of objections. "Where are the email threads from those meetings?" I asked. "These are the official minutes." Minutes don't show emails. Someone had to send follow-ups. I want to see the full correspondence. We're not here to litigate every email. We're here to address your failure to follow safety reporting procedures. You had concerns, you didn't file them properly, and now we have a federal investigation and a PR crisis. She slid another document across the table. "This is a formal written warning for procedural violations and failure to escalate safety concerns. You're being placed on performance monitoring effective immediately. Any further violations will result in termination." I looked at my union rep. He was reading the warning like it was a grocery list. "Sign at the bottom," the HR director said. "I'm not signing this, it's not accurate. If you refuse to sign, we'll note that in your file. It doesn't change the warning. It just shows you're not cooperating with the review process." My rep leaned toward me. "Fiona, signing just means you received it. It doesn't mean you agree." I picked up the pen and signed. My hand shook so hard the signature looked nothing like the one on the forged memo. We walked out together. He waited until we were in the stairwell before he spoke. "This is bad," he said. "I didn't do what they're saying. I believe you. But the optics are brutal. Your name is on that memo, you were in those meetings, and the company has no record of your objections. From the outside, it looks like you either approved the cuts or failed to stop them. So what do we do?" He stopped on the landing and looked at me. "Honestly, I think you should consider a settlement." I stared at him. "A settlement? The union can fight this, but it's going to be ugly. The case is all over the news. The FAA is investigating. Congress is holding hearings. If we go aggressive, the company will bury you in documentation and legal costs. It could take years. So I just quit? I'm saying you take a severance package, sign an NDA, and walk away with something instead of losing everything in a fight you might not win. They forged my signature, they deleted my emails, and you want me to let them pay me to disappear? I want you to think about your son, your mortgage, your career. If this goes public in a union fight, every airline in the country will know your name. You'll never work in operations again. I felt something cold settle in my chest. You're supposed to be on my side. I am on your side. That's why I'm telling you the truth. This case is too big. The union can't take on a federal investigation and a media circus. We'd be fighting the company, the press, and public opinion all at once. So you're not going to help me. I'm saying you need to be realistic. I'll support whatever you decide, but I'm not going to lie to you about the odds. He walked down the stairs and left me standing there. I went back to my desk and opened my laptop. The company intranet had a new post from the communications department, supporting our team through challenging times. It talked about counseling resources and the importance of following protocol during investigations. My name wasn't mentioned, but everyone knew who it was about. I had 3 new emails, one from a coworker asking if I needed anything, one from my director scheduling a check-in call for Monday, one from a reporter asking if I'd reconsidered giving an interview. I closed my laptop and stared at the cubicle wall. A senior manager named Gerald stopped by my desk an hour later. He leaned against the partition and crossed his arms. "Rough week," he said. "Yeah, I saw that memo. The signature looked off to me. I mentioned it to a few people." I looked up at him. "You think it's forged?" "I didn't say that. I just said it looked different from your usual signature, but I'm not a handwriting expert." "Did you tell HR that?" I told them I had questions. They said the analysis was inconclusive. He glanced around like he was checking for listeners. "Look, I know you're in a tough spot. If you need someone to vouch for your work, I'm happy to do that." "Thank you. That means a lot. Just keep your head down and let this blow over. The news cycle moves fast. In a month, people will forget." He walked away. I went back to work and tried to focus on a maintenance schedule review. My phone buzzed with a text from my supervisor asking if I'd signed the HR warning. I texted back that I had. She replied, "Good, let's move forward." On Monday, I sat in on a department meeting over video call. 12 people on screen, most of them with cameras off. Gerald was there with his camera on, sitting in a conference room with 2 other managers. My director opened the meeting with an update on the FAA investigation. "We're cooperating fully and providing all requested documentation. I want to remind everyone that proper procedure is critical right now. If you have concerns about safety or compliance, use the official reporting system. Don't rely on informal communication." He looked directly at the camera when he said it. Gerald unmuted himself. "I think it's worth noting that some of us have been under a lot of pressure lately. Budget season is stressful. People make mistakes when they're overwhelmed." He paused. "I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying we should remember that when we're reviewing what happened." Someone else unmuted. "What are you saying, Gerald?" "I'm saying Fiona's been juggling a lot. I've seen her look pretty stressed in meetings. It's possible she signed off on something without fully reviewing it. It happens." I felt my face go hot. "I didn't sign that memo. I've been saying that since day one. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just saying stress affects memory. Maybe you don't remember signing it." "I remember not signing it." My director cut in. "Let's keep this productive. Gerald, thanks for the input. Fiona, we'll discuss this offline." The meeting moved on. I sat there staring at my screen while 12 people pretended I wasn't falling apart in front of them. Gerald sent me a private message 5 minutes later. "Sorry if that came out wrong, just trying to help." I didn't respond. That afternoon, a news article appeared with a new angle. Emails show airline manager participated in cost-cutting discussions. The story included excerpts from budget meeting notes where I'd been listed as an attendee. One line quoted me as saying, "We need to find efficiencies." Another said I'd asked about timeline for implementation. I'd said those things in the context of arguing that cuts needed to be done carefully, with safety reviews, not rushed. The article left that part out. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered. "Fiona, this is Richard Caldwell from the executive team. Do you have a minute?" "Yes." "I wanted to reach out personally and let you know we're handling this situation with the utmost care. The company values your 12 years of service, and we're committed to protecting you through this process." "Then why am I being written up for procedural violations?" "That's standard process during an investigation. It doesn't reflect our view of your character or your work. Between you and me, we know you're not the problem here, but we have to follow protocol while the FAA does their review." The news is saying I approved those cuts. The news is taking things out of context. We're working on a fuller statement. In the meantime, the best thing you can do is stay quiet and let us manage the narrative. If you go public or start making claims about forgery, it'll look defensive and make things worse. Someone forged my signature. I understand you believe that, but right now we need to present a united front. The company will take care of you if you work with us. If you go rogue, we can't protect you. He hung up. 2 days later, another article appeared. Internal documents reveal safety concerns were raised but not acted upon. This one included more meeting notes and a partial email thread where someone had asked about maintenance staffing levels. My name was in the CC line. The article made it sound like I'd been part of the decision-making process and had failed to escalate properly. I called my director. "Where are these documents coming from?" "Legal is cooperating with the investigation. Sometimes things get leaked." These emails make it look like I was on board with the cuts. Fiona, I can't control what the press does with information. Focus on your work and let legal handle the rest. I sat alone in my home office staring at my screen. Every email I sent to defend myself disappeared. Every meeting I attended got twisted into evidence against me. Every person who privately said they believed me publicly suggested I was confused or overwhelmed. The company was building a case piece by piece, and I had nothing to fight it with except my word against a forged signature and a stack of meeting notes that made me look complicit. They were going to make this stick. They were going to sacrifice my career to protect whoever actually signed that memo, and no one was going to stop them. The first national segment aired on Thursday morning. I was making breakfast when my phone started buzzing with texts from people I hadn't spoken to in years. I opened the news app and saw my face next to a chyron that read, "Airline manager at center of safety scandal." The anchor introduced the story with footage from the emergency landing. Passengers screaming, a child crying, flight attendants bracing against seats. Then they cut to my employee photo, the one from the company directory, blown up to fill the screen. Fiona Brennan signed off on staffing cuts that investigators say left maintenance teams dangerously understaffed, the anchor said. Sources tell us those cuts were implemented just months before this terrifying incident. They showed the memo. My signature filled the screen. A safety expert they'd brought on started talking about regulatory failures and corporate negligence. He mentioned my name 4 times in 2 minutes. I turned off the television and stood in the kitchen staring at my coffee. My son walked in and stopped. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." I poured his cereal and set it on the table. "Eat. You'll be late." He ate in silence. I watched him push the spoon around the bowl without looking at me. The bus came at 7:30. I walked him to the door and watched him get on. 3 kids in the back row turned to stare at him. One of them whispered something to the kid next to her. I went back inside and checked my phone. 17 new messages, most of them from reporters, 2 from coworkers asking if I'd seen the news, 1 from my sister asking if I needed anything. I called her. "I just saw it," she said. "It's everywhere." "I didn't sign that memo." "I know, but Fiona, they're making you look like a monster. You need to do something." Legal told me to stay quiet. Legal is protecting the company, not you. If you don't defend yourself, this is all people are going to know about you. If I go public, they'll fire me. They're going to fire you anyway. At least if you speak up, people will hear your side. I hung up and sat on the couch. My laptop was open to a news site. The story had been shared 12,000 times. The comments were worse than before. Someone had posted a photo of their son and written, "He flies twice a year. People like Fiona Brennan put him at risk." Another comment said, "She should be in prison." Another said, "I hope she never works again." I closed the laptop. My phone rang. "Unknown number," I answered. "Mrs. Brennan, this is Principal Hartwell from Riverside Elementary. Do you have a few minutes to come in today?" My stomach dropped. "Is my son okay?" "He's fine, but we'd like to talk to you about some concerns that have come up this week. Would 11 o'clock work?" "What kind of concerns?" "I'd rather discuss it in person. Can you make it?" "I'll be there." I drove to the school and signed in at the front desk. The secretary looked at me, glanced at her computer screen, and told me to wait in the lobby. Principal Hartwell came out 5 minutes later. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks for coming in. Let's talk in my office." We walked down the hallway. A teacher passed us and looked away. Hartwell shut the door and sat behind her desk. "I want to start by saying we support all our families, and we know this is a difficult time for you." "What happened?" "We've had several parents reach out with concerns about the upcoming field trip to the Science Museum. Some of them have seen the news coverage and they're worried about their children's safety." I stared at her. "You think I'm going to hurt kids on a field trip?" "Of course not. But parents are asking questions, and we need to address their concerns. Some of them have asked if you'll be chaperoning." "I signed up 2 months ago." "I know, and normally that wouldn't be an issue. But given the current situation, we think it might be better if you sat this one out, just until things settle down." "You're telling me I can't go on my son's field trip because parents think I'm dangerous." "I'm saying we want to avoid any disruptions or uncomfortable situations, for your son's sake as much as anyone else's." "My son wants me there." "I understand, but we've also had some incidents this week. A few students have been repeating things they've heard at home, comments about your job, about the plane incident. We had to separate 2 boys who got into an argument about it. One of them is in your son's class." I felt something crack in my chest. "What did they say?" I'd rather not repeat it, but it's clear that some families are struggling with how to talk to their children about this situation, and it's affecting the school environment. "So you want me to disappear?" "I want to protect your son from becoming the focus of other students' confusion and fear. If parents see you at the field trip, it's going to create tension. Kids will pick up on that. It won't be fair to him." I looked at her. She was leaning forward with her hands folded, trying to look sympathetic, but I could see the relief in her eyes. She wanted me to agree. She wanted this problem to go away. "I'll talk to him," I said. "Thank you, I know this isn't easy." I walked back to my car and sat in the parking lot. 2 mothers were standing near the entrance talking. One of them saw me and said something to the other. They both walked inside. I drove home and tried to work. My laptop was open to a maintenance report I'd been reviewing for 3 days. I read the same paragraph 4 times and couldn't retain a single word. My phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged me in a post. I opened it and saw a video. A woman in her 40s sat in a living room with red eyes and a tissue in her hand. "My sister was on that plane," she said. "She's still having nightmares. She won't fly anymore. She's afraid every time she gets in a car. And the person who did this to her is still working at that airline like nothing happened." She held up a printout of my employee photo. This is Fiona Brennan. She signed the memo that cut the staff who should have caught that hydraulic problem. She chose money over people's lives, and she's still getting a paycheck. She looked directly at the camera. If you care about airline safety, share this video. Demand accountability. My sister deserves justice. Every passenger on that plane deserves justice. Fiona Brennan needs to be fired. The video had 60,000 views. The comments were full of people saying they'd never fly that airline again. People posting photos of their families and saying, this could have been us. People calling for my arrest. I set my phone down and stared at the wall. My husband came home at 6. He dropped his briefcase by the door and looked at me. We need to talk. About what? My mom called. She saw the video. She wanted to know if we were okay. What did you tell her? I told her it was complicated. Then my brother called. Then my sister. Then 3 people from work sent me messages asking if you were really the person in the news. What did you say? I said you didn't do it. I said someone forged your signature. But Fiona, they're not sure they believe me. My mom asked if we'd thought about getting a lawyer. My brother asked if we were worried about money. My sister said maybe you should just resign and move on. I looked at him. Do you believe me? Of course I believe you. Then why does it sound like you're trying to convince yourself? Because I don't know how to explain this to people anymore. Everyone we know has seen that video. They've seen the articles. They've seen your face on the news. And when I tell them you didn't do it, they look at me like I'm in denial. So what do you want me to do? I don't know, but I can't keep defending you to people who've already made up their minds. It's exhausting. He walked into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. I heard him moving things around, slamming the door, running water. My son came downstairs and sat next to me on the couch. Mom, can I ask you something? Yeah. Logan's mom told him you should go to jail. She said you almost injured people. Is that true? No. Someone at work lied and used my name. I didn't do what they're saying. Then why does everyone think you did? Because the person who actually did it made it look like I was the one who signed the paperwork. Can't you prove you didn't? I'm trying, but it's complicated. He looked at me. Logan said I shouldn't come to his birthday party. His mom said it would make people uncomfortable. I felt something break inside me. I'm sorry. It's not your fault, but everyone at school thinks it is. He went back upstairs. I sat on the couch and stared at my phone. The video had been shared 8,000 times. A local news station had picked it up and run a segment asking if I should face criminal charges. A parents' group had started a petition calling for my termination. The next morning, I drove back to the school for a follow-up meeting Hartwell had scheduled. She met me in her office with the same forced smile. Thank you for coming back in. I wanted to touch base about how things are going. My son told me he's not invited to birthday parties anymore. She looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry to hear that. Kids can be unkind when they don't understand something. It's not the kids, it's the parents. I know this is hard, but I think we need to be realistic about the current environment. Parents are scared. They see the news, they see the video, and they're trying to protect their children. Right or wrong, that's where we are. So what are you telling me? I'm telling you that we're doing everything we can to support your son, but we're also getting pressure from other families. Some of them have asked if he's still going to be in the same class next year. Others have asked about transfers. They want him gone. They want reassurance. And right now, the best way to give them that is to minimize visible reminders of the situation. You mean me? She didn't answer. I looked at her sitting behind her desk, hands folded, trying to look sympathetic while clearly wishing we'd just moved to another district. She didn't believe I was dangerous. She just didn't want to deal with parents who did. Is there anything else? I asked. Just that we're here if you need support. Counseling services, resources, anything that might help. I stood up and walked out. I sat in my car in the parking lot and watched parents dropping off their kids. One of them saw me and pulled her daughter closer. Another one stared at me through her windshield and didn't look away until I started my engine. I drove home and sat in the driveway. My phone buzzed with another news alert. Congress announces hearing on airline safety failures. My name was in the first paragraph. I was sitting in my car outside a coffee shop 20 minutes from my house when a text came through from a number I didn't recognize. I have information about the memo. Can we meet? Not at the office. I stared at the screen. It could have been a reporter. It could have been someone setting me up. But I was out of options. I texted back. Where? Park on Elm, 30 minutes. I'll be at the bench near the playground. I drove there and parked at the far end of the lot. A man in his late 20s sat on the bench with his hands in his jacket pockets. He looked up when I approached, glanced around like he was checking for cameras, and gestured for me to sit. I'm Rory, he said. I work in document management. I process digital signatures and file archives. Okay. I saw your name in the news. I recognized the memo. I was the one who archived it after it got routed through the system. My pulse spiked. What do you mean you archived it? He pulled a USB drive out of his pocket and set it on the bench between us. His hand was shaking. The metadata doesn't match. Your signature file was copied from an older document and inserted into the memo 3 weeks after you last logged into the signature system. The timestamp on the file shows it was created in February. The memo is dated January. I stared at the drive. You're sure? I pulled the access logs. Someone with executive credentials accessed your signature archive, copied the file, and transplanted it into the memo. Then they backdated the document properties to make it look legitimate. But the system logs don't lie. I can show you exactly when it happened and which account did it. Why are you telling me this? Because I have a kid. I saw that video of the woman talking about her sister. I thought about my daughter on a plane. Then I looked at the file data and realized someone set you up. That's not right. He pushed the drive toward me. There's something else on there. Internal chat logs. An executive named Richard Caldwell was talking to someone in legal about needing a middle manager to take the hit for the staffing review. He said your name. He said you were credible enough to make it stick and expendable enough that no one would fight for you. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Caldwell called me 2 weeks ago. He told me the company would protect me if I stayed quiet. He was covering his tracks. He's the one who signed off on the cuts. He needed someone to take the blame before the FAA hearing. Why would he use my name? You argued against the cuts in meetings. You were on record opposing them. That made you the perfect scapegoat. If you got blamed, it would look like you went rogue and approved them anyway. It would make the company look like they had tried to stop it and you ignored protocol. I picked up the drive. If I use this, they'll know it came from you. I know, but I can't sit on it. I've been losing sleep for 2 weeks. My wife thinks I'm having a breakdown. He stood up and looked at me. Just don't wait too long. Caldwell's lawyers are good. If they figure out someone leaked this, they'll bury it before you get a chance to use it. He walked back to his car and drove away. I sat on the bench holding the drive. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone and searched for employment attorneys. The first 3 results were corporate firms that represented companies, not employees. The fourth was a solo practitioner named Danielle Sterling who specialized in fraud and retaliation cases. I called her office. The receptionist answered and said Sterling was in court but could meet tomorrow morning. It can't wait that long, I said. Is this an emergency? I have evidence that my employer forged my signature and framed me for a safety violation that's being investigated by the FAA. I need to talk to someone today. She put me on hold. 2 minutes later, Sterling picked up. Tell me what you have, she said. I explained the memo, the news coverage, the HR warnings, and the USB drive I'd just received. I told her about Caldwell's call and the chat logs. She was quiet for a moment. Where are you right now? A park on Elm Street. Stay there. I'm 20 minutes away. She pulled up in a silver sedan and got out with a laptop bag. She sat next to me on the bench and held out her hand. Let me see the drive. I handed it to her. She plugged it into her laptop and opened the files. I watched her scroll through access logs, timestamps, and chat transcripts. She stopped on one message and read it twice. This is Caldwell? She asked. Yeah. She turned the screen toward me. The message was from Caldwell to someone in legal. We need someone on record for the staffing memo. Brennan fought it in meetings, so if we tag her, it looks like she went rogue instead of us ignoring her. She's mid-level, good record, no executive protection, perfect fall guy. Get the signature file from archives and backdate the approval. I'll handle the FAA narrative. I felt my stomach turn. Sterling kept scrolling. She pulled up the metadata logs and traced the signature file's movement. This is solid. They copied your signature from a maintenance approval you signed in December and transplanted it into the staffing memo in February. Then they altered the document timestamp to make it look like it was created in January. But the system access logs show exactly when the file was edited and which account did it. Can we prove it was Caldwell? The account is tied to his executive credentials. Either he did it himself or someone used his login. Either way, he's liable. She closed the laptop and looked at me. The FAA is holding a public hearing next week to review the incident. Congress is sending observers. If you submit this evidence to the hearing panel, they'll have to investigate it on the record. Caldwell will be forced to respond publicly. He can't bury it or settle it quietly. What if they say the evidence is fake? The metadata is timestamped by the company's own servers. They'd have to claim their entire document management system is compromised, which would open them up to even bigger liability. They won't do that. What do I need to do? I'll draft a formal submission with the evidence and file it with the hearing panel tonight. I'll also request that Caldwell be subpoenaed to testify. If he refuses, it'll look like he's hiding something. If he shows up, he'll have to answer questions under oath about these chat logs and the signature forgery. She stood up and packed her laptop. This is going to get ugly. The company will come at you hard. They'll try to discredit the evidence, discredit Rory, and discredit you. Are you ready for that? They already destroyed my reputation. I don't have anything left to lose. Yes, you do. You have the truth. And once it's on the record, they can't make it disappear. She handed me her card. I'll call you tonight once the filing is submitted. In the meantime, don't talk to anyone from the company. Don't answer calls from Caldwell or HR. If they try to pressure you before the hearing, document everything. She drove away. I sat in my car and stared at the USB drive. For 2 weeks, I'd been drowning. Every move I made got twisted into evidence against me. Every person who said they believed me eventually suggested I was confused or overwhelmed. I'd been fighting shadows. Now I had something solid. Something with timestamps and account credentials and Caldwell's own words admitting he'd set me up. I drove home and waited. My phone buzzed with another news alert. Airline executive to testify at safety hearing. The article said Caldwell had been called to answer questions about the company's staffing decisions. It didn't mention me. Sterling called at 8 that night. The submission is filed. The hearing panel accepted it and flagged it for priority review. Caldwell has been formally subpoenaed. He'll have to appear and respond to the evidence on the record. When? Next Thursday. You'll testify first and present the logs. Then Caldwell will be called. The panel will question both of you. It'll be public. Press will be there. What if he lies? Then we show them the metadata. The logs don't lie. If he claims he didn't forge the signature, we show them his account credentials on the access records. If he claims the chat logs are fake, we show them the server timestamps. He's locked in. I hung up and sat on the couch. My son came downstairs and looked at me. Mom, are you okay? I'm better than I've been in a while. Did something happen? I found proof that someone at work lied about me. I'm going to show it to the people investigating what happened. He sat next to me. Does that mean people will stop saying you did it? I hope so. He leaned against me. Good. I'm tired of Logan's mom being mean to you. I put my arm around him and stared at the wall. For the first time in 2 weeks, I could breathe. The hearing was in 6 days. Caldwell would be sitting across from me in front of investigators, reporters, and a public record that couldn't be erased. He'd have to explain the chat logs, the forged signature, and the access records that tied it all back to him. And this time I'd have more than my word. The hearing room was smaller than I expected. Rows of seats filled with reporters, airline staff, and safety advocates. A long table at the front where 5 investigators sat with folders and laptops. My attorney sat beside me at a smaller table facing them. Caldwell sat 20 feet away with 2 corporate lawyers. I'd barely slept. I'd rehearsed what I was going to say 100 times. Now I was staring at the lead investigator while she reviewed the submission packet. She looked up. Ms. Brennan, you've provided document logs, access metadata, and internal communications that you claim prove your signature was forged on the January staffing memo. Walk us through what we're looking at. I opened my laptop and pulled up the first file. My hands were shaking, but my voice stayed steady. This is the signature file that appears on the memo. It's identical to a signature I used on a maintenance approval form in December. The metadata shows the file was copied from that December document and inserted into the staffing memo on February 9th. The memo itself is dated January 15th. One of the investigators leaned forward. How do you know when the file was copied? The system access logs show exactly when someone opened my signature archive, extracted the file, and inserted it into a new document. The timestamp is February 9th at 2:17 in the afternoon. I was logged out of the system that day. I was homesick. My login shows no activity. I pulled up the access records and turned the screen toward them. The account that accessed my signature file was tied to executive credentials, specifically Richard Caldwell's account. Caldwell's lawyer stood up. This is speculation. Ms. Brennan has no way of knowing who accessed that system or whether the logs have been tampered with. My attorney cut in. The logs are generated automatically by the company's document management system. They're time-stamped by the server and can't be altered without leaving a forensic trail. If the company wants to claim the logs are fake, they'll need to explain how their entire security infrastructure was compromised. The lead investigator looked at Caldwell. Mr. Caldwell, can you explain why your credentials appear on these access records? He leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. I review hundreds of documents every month. It's possible I accessed that file as part of a routine audit. I don't recall specifically opening Ms. Brennan's signature archive, but it's not unusual for executives to review personnel files. Why would you need to review her signature file? I wouldn't, which suggests this may be a technical error or a misreading of the logs. I pulled up the next file. This is an internal chat log between Mr. Caldwell and someone in the legal department. It's dated February 8th, one day before my signature was copied. I read it out loud. We need someone on record for the staffing memo. Brennan fought it in meetings, so if we tag her, it looks like she went rogue instead of us ignoring her. She's mid-level, good record, no executive protection, perfect fall guy. Get the signature file from archives and backdate the approval. I'll handle the FAA narrative. The room went completely quiet. Caldwell's face went red. That's out of context. We were discussing risk management strategies. I never authorized anyone to forge a signature. You said, get the signature file from archives and backdate the approval. What else could that mean? It was a hypothetical conversation about how someone could manipulate records. We were reviewing security vulnerabilities. One of the investigators pulled up her own laptop and scrolled through something. Mr. Caldwell, this chat log includes your employee ID, your account credentials, and a server timestamp. Are you claiming this conversation didn't happen? I'm saying it's been misinterpreted. Then explain what get the signature file means in the context of a security review. He didn't answer. The investigator looked at my attorney. Do you have additional evidence? We do. We've subpoenaed the document systems manager who processed this memo. He's prepared to testify about the metadata and the access records. Rory was called in 20 minutes later. He looked terrified. He sat at the witness table with his hands folded and answered every question in a quiet, steady voice. The signature file was copied from an older document and inserted into the memo using executive-level credentials, he said. The timestamp on the file creation doesn't match the timestamp on the document itself. Someone backdated the memo to make it look like it was created in January, but the actual file was created in February. Can you tell us whose credentials were used? Richard Caldwell's account. The access log shows his employee ID, his login session, and the exact time the file was accessed. Is there any way someone else could have used his credentials? Not without his password. The system requires multi-factor authentication for executive accounts. You can't access it remotely without a physical security token. One of Caldwell's lawyers stood up. Mr. Caldwell's account could have been compromised. IT staff have access to executive credentials for maintenance purposes. Rory shook his head. IT access is logged separately and flagged in the system. This access came from Mr. Caldwell's office desktop during business hours. The session log shows he was actively working in other files at the same time. It wasn't a remote login or a maintenance session. The investigator looked at Caldwell. Were you in your office on February 9th at 2:17 in the afternoon? Caldwell glanced at his lawyers. One of them leaned over and whispered something. He cleared his throat. I may have been. I don't recall the specific time. Your building access card shows you badged into the executive suite at 1:45 that afternoon and didn't leave until 5:30. You were there. He went quiet. The investigator pulled up another document. We also have email records showing you authorized the staffing cuts in December and pushed for immediate implementation, despite objections from Ms. Brennan and 3 other managers. You were copied on her written objections. You replied to one of them telling her to focus on execution, not policy. I was managing a budget crisis. Tough decisions had to be made. Then why didn't you put your name on the memo? He didn't answer. She leaned forward. You approved the cuts. You knew they were controversial. You needed someone to take responsibility if they went wrong. So you used Ms. Brennan's signature, framed her as the decision maker, and when the FAA started investigating, you let her take the fall. Is that accurate? No, that's not what happened. Then what did happen? He looked at his lawyers. One of them stood up. We'd like to request a recess to review the evidence. Denied. Mr. Caldwell, answer the question. He stared at the table. His face was red and his jaw was tight. He opened his mouth, closed it, and looked at his lawyers again. I was trying to protect the company, he said finally. By framing an innocent employee? By managing a crisis. The cuts were necessary. Ms. Brennan opposed them publicly, and it created a liability. If the FAA found out we'd implemented cuts over internal objections, it would have looked like we ignored our own safety protocols. I needed the record to show that someone with operational authority had signed off, so you forged her signature. I used an existing signature file to expedite the approval process. It was an administrative shortcut. It was fraud. He didn't respond. The lead investigator closed her folder. This panel finds that Ms. Brennan's signature was forged and that she bore no responsibility for the staffing cuts outlined in the January memo. We're referring this matter to the Department of Justice for a criminal investigation into document fraud and corporate retaliation. Ms. Brennan's professional clearance and safety certifications are reinstated immediately. Mr. Caldwell, you're being placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the DOJ review. She looked at me. Ms. Brennan, on behalf of this panel, I apologize for the harm you've suffered. You were right to fight this. I nodded. I couldn't speak. The hearing ended. Reporters swarmed the hallway outside. My attorney stopped at the microphones and made a brief statement confirming the forgery and my vindication. I stood beside her and said nothing. Cameras flashed. Someone shouted a question about whether I'd sue the company. Someone else asked if I felt justice had been served. We walked to the parking garage and I sat in my car. My phone was buzzing with messages. My union rep saying he was glad it worked out and offering full legal support going forward. My director saying the company would be reaching out about next steps. A reporter asking for an exclusive interview. I drove home. The neighbor's car was in the driveway. She was getting groceries out of her trunk. She saw me, hesitated, and went inside without waving. I parked and walked to the front door. My husband was in the kitchen. He looked up when I came in. How did it go? They cleared me. Caldwell's under investigation. My certifications are restored. He hugged me. That's incredible. Yeah. Are you okay? I don't know yet. My son came downstairs. Mom, did you win? Yeah, I won. So people know you didn't do it? The people at the hearing know. It'll be in the news tonight. He sat on the couch. Logan's mom said you got caught lying. She said that's why you had to go to the hearing. I sat next to him. Logan's mom didn't watch the hearing. She's repeating what she heard 2 weeks ago. So when will she know the truth? I don't know. Some people believe the first thing they hear and don't check if it changes. That's not fair. No, it's not. He looked at me. Are kids still going to think you're bad? Maybe for a while. It takes time for people to change their minds. Longer than it took for them to make them up in the first place. I don't like that. I don't either. He leaned against me. I put my arm around him and stared at the wall. The official record was corrected. My career was saved. Caldwell was facing consequences. But the neighbors still wouldn't look at me. The parents at school still whispered. My son still wasn't invited to birthday parties. I'd won the legal fight and lost everything around it. The months of fear, the broken relationships, the damage to my child's sense of safety in a place that was supposed to protect him, none of that could be undone by a single hearing. I sat with my son and held him close, knowing we'd have to rebuild trust one slow day at a time in a community that had been too quick to condemn and too slow to correct.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your favorite part in the comments. See you in the next one.